Okay, well, welcome back to the podcast, and it's great to have everyone here with us. As you know, I always like to see guests and have great conversations with sales experts and people that love sales as much as I do, can help you from a business perspective. And I'm really pleased that I've got a gentleman that reached out to me, and we had a conversation and said, you should get on the podcast, and here we are. So Richard Few, the founder of Sales Geek, is on the podcast with me. Good afternoon, Richard. How are you?
I'm very good, James. Thank you for having me.
Oh, lovely to have you. Look, I know you've just been back from doing some travel a little while ago. We talked about it. For those that don't know you, introduce yourself a little bit. Obviously, you've got a huge career and background in sales. You've sold lots of different elements, and sales is in your blood like it is mine. But talk to those that don't know you. If they don't know you, who you are, and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So, so like I said, I founded Sales Geek nearly 9 years ago. It'll be 9 years in February since I left the comfort of employed life for the first time, which was pretty scary. But yeah, I guess as a business, we've now grown the brand. Certainly, in the last half of those 9 years, we franchised our model, and we're now across the UK and into the US. And like I said, I was in India last week. We're onboarding new geeks from India and Malaysia and Mongolia. Of all the countries in the world, we've now got some geeks on the ground in Mongolia. It's been a fascinating journey, and one that satisfies my short attention span on a pretty much a weekly basis. But yeah, I guess prior to that, like most people, I ended up in sales. I was an early school leaver. I left school at 16 to pursue a professional golf career.
Oh, wow, okay.
And then had to come to terms with the fact that wasn't working out. So I ended up in sales and had a really good career and was very fortunate, but ultimately got to a point where probably like a lot of people that end up doing what we do, I kind of hit the proverbial wall kind of career-wise, doing what I was doing, where I was doing it. Love sales leadership, love the science of sales. And on the 7th of February, 2017, I waved goodbye to that career and started this.
Congrats. Well, we'll talk a bit more about Sales Geek, and it's interesting because one of the things we talked about earlier on was, that some people might be listening to this going, why are you bringing other people that are competitors to you on the podcast? And the reason being, because we just said, I don't think there is competition. There's so much work that we know both of us need to do to educate and help people sell better and learn, sales skills, that I think it's something that I think we both feel. But just on that basis, obviously you had a career in you say you fell into sales. Was sales your first job then from 16 when you left? And was that sort of, did you get into anything else, or was it a case that you just sort of thought, right, I'll give the sales thing a go, and then you turned out to be quite good at it?
So my first employed role was as an assistant golf pro at the golf club. I'd worked there since I was 13, doing kind of weekends and half terms and stuff like that. And all I wanted to do the whole way through school was play golf for a living. So I was the typical young, ambitious, sporty kid who didn't believe I'd ever need an education to back me up in the real world. And actually, on that bit, I'm not sure I was wrong, really. But let's not go down that channel today.
That's a different conversation.
Yeah, that is a different conversation. But the first 2 years was earning £100 a week, working as an assistant pro at the golf club.
Golf shafts, basically.
Doing club repairs, changing or cleats they call them now, but spikes in shoes, and selling merchandise in the shop. And I guess probably the reality was from 13, when I was signing green fees in at the pro shop and selling balls and gloves and stuff, that was probably my first sales job. Really, I didn't really see it that way. I just loved helping people. I loved the products and the technology behind it. So yeah, that was my first employed role, I guess, was as an assistant golf pro from sort of 16 to about 18 years old.
And then you, from what from reading your background before, you got into a car company. Is that correct? Or was that your first sort of? Was that, because I know you became from a set? Was there one before that? Maybe I've missed part of the step.
Yeah, no. So I'm not sure how far my LinkedIn goes back, actually, but I suppose my next move then was, again, I realised a bit of a smack in the face as an 18-year-old.
Golf wasn't going to work for you, basically.
Yeah, I was playing up to national tournaments and I was getting my backside handed to me by 13-year-olds. So I kind of had to come to terms with the fact that I probably wasn't going to make a living out of playing. And yeah, when I looked at the life of a club pro, it kind of wasn't really for me either. It's a tough gig, that those guys work relentless hours and not a lot of return. So yeah, my first job was in the motor trades, and my first proper sales job was selling second-hand Nissans in Slough.
Wow.
With my first proper quote unquote sales job, and that purely came about. I growing up, my dad was a mechanic. when I was a kid. I'd grown up around vehicles. I'm a bit of a petrol head now still, and love cars. So I'm like, I knew how to speak to people in the pro shop, and I love cars. And there was a member at my golf club who was the dealer principal for a Nissan dealer in had a site in Slough, High Wycombe, and Northeast London. And yeah, he took a punt on me, and yeah, I took the job. I still remember now. It was like I think the basic salary was about six. I think it was about £6.5 grand a year. I think the basic salary back then. So you're earning £500 a month on a basic salary, and the rest of it's all variable. So yeah, properly in at the deep end as a young lad.
And did you move down from today? You were based in the northwest. Did you move down literally for that job down to Slough then from the northwest?
No, I'm a Buckinghamshire lad, born and
Oh,
born
wait
and
a minute.
raised.
I saw something like Clitheroe. I thought maybe it was, but maybe that's where you are now, basically.
Yeah, so we moved up here about 12 years ago. But yeah, I was born and raised in Buckinghamshire. So yeah, at that point in
Okay.
my career, I was kind of based in the southeast.
Okay, cool. And talk about those early days when you were in that career. Was there any any individual or person that you look back and think that especially as you went through your journey and career, that inspired you, was a mentor, that was someone that you can remember back now, their words that in your ears that you think, yeah, actually, do you know what? I didn't like listening to them at the time, but actually they had some good advice.
Yeah, I think probably more than I'll even be able to recall. I'm sure, like even through working in the pro shop, I think about the head pro. He was obsessed. And although I've kind of changed my own stance on this a little bit, he was obsessed with product knowledge and understanding the technology. And at that point, there was a huge amount of evolution in club and ball technology and golf, and kind of staying ahead of that. And really, I suppose that market was kind of selling on features and benefits really more so than kind of need, because every golfer wants to be able to hit it further and straighter. So it's kind of a bit of a shooting fish in a barrel, really, from that perspective. But I think when I started and as a young guy in the motor trade, I had several people around me that I had a mercurial kind of 40-something-year-old sales guy called Mike. Everything he touched turned to gold, and I could never fully understand how he did it. He was like this magical, mythical unicorn that sat in the corner of the showroom and just hit numbers relentlessly every single month. He was unreal, and I guess I learned a lot from him over that 18 months, and a lot of that was really around consistency and understanding people. And I think that was kind of my first step towards a people first approach, really, rather than products and service first approach. But also learned a lot of harsh lessons in that environment. That's a tough environment as an 18-year-old kid. The family that owned and run those dealerships were, how would I describe it? Fairly short on tolerance for ill performance. So you don't have a lot of time to prove yourself. And yeah, although ultimately after a few years of doing that, I was desperate to get into a B2B career because I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder about selling cars, and I wanted to have a proper sales job. I think I learned some stuff there in that B2C environment that stood me in really, really good stead. And a lot of that was I had a sales manager called Chris. He was one of the nicest guys I ever met in sales. Like, just as a sales manager, he was one of the most empathetic in what was quite a harsh environment, and one of the most empathetic like mentors I think I ever had the chance to work with. And yeah, he nurtured me brilliantly, I think, for those first couple of years that I was in that role.
It's funny you say about. I mean, I don't met you, but I learned. I started selling when I was 11 on a market stall, right, selling shoes, and I think those experiences where you have when you're doing that graph, whether it's at cars or whether it's golf clubs or whether it's they just stand you in great stead. And I think it's one of the things maybe we'll pick up later on in the podcast. But the elements that you've got to do you've got to do your grounding really as a salesperson, I think. And one of the things that when I talk to a lot of people, they say, well, no, they want the success, but I ask them what work have they done to get there, and actually, it doesn't really make that they've done much of the graft and the grunt work, and no one wants to be told to go away and hiss off and whatever else. But it's like whether it's market shoes or when I was sold double glazing, the same as a lot of you actually go through that. It makes you better, doesn't it? And sometimes you need that element of engagement to and support, I guess, to make you realise that the sales isn't easy.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that experience, I think, from I did quite a lot of stuff in hospitality and kind of waited on and kind of worked in pubs and washing pots and doing that sort of stuff as a young guy. And I think that service sector, hospitality sector, is a really, really good grounding as like a pre-sales career kind of environment, just to just to learn about people and kind of,
Yeah.
to be on the spot, having to deal with situations face to face with other human beings when things aren't going right as well sometimes. And I think there's so much about that, I think there's a lot of young people that skip in that step a little bit these days. But I think for me growing up, it was a really normal thing to go and earn some extra cash. Through that period of my life, and the paper rounds and waiting on, and doing Sundays in the pro shop. And I didn't realize at the time how good a grounding that was going to be for a career in sales.
Mhm.
And for different reasons, I guess some of that was actually learning how to sell things in the pro shop. But some of that was also, doing 6 mornings a week, getting up at 6 o'clock to go and deliver newspapers through people's letterboxes when it was smashing it down with rain, and having to get up and get out and get up and get out and get up and get out for 12 quid a week or whatever it was I was getting paid. And I think, so much of sales is turning up, right, over and over again. And there's a lot of those life lessons that you get
It,
in environments.
Yeah, you're right. I think I want to pick up on the people stuff because I think you're so right about the people skills. But can you remember? Just go back to the car job in this Sam. Can you remember when you had Can you remember that first sale that sort of officially came through? And did it? Do you remember who you sold it to? What it felt like at the time? It's probably a little while back, but the first sale always, the first official sale in a sales role always feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I remember it really vividly. It was quite early on, and it was at the end of my second week. And I was working out of there. Although I ended up in Slough, I was working at another place in Northeast London in Eastcote, and I was working at the site there, and I was sort of doing my onboarding training. And at the end of the second week, one of the owners came over to me, and took my tie off me, which was just a generic tie, probably a cheap one from somewhere, because
Something like that.
didn't have much of a selection back then. In fact, it's almost as small as it is now. But I kind of went through, there's a bell curve, I think, with owning ties and suits in your career. And he put the company tie on me with the it was grey and white stripe with Nissan and Dan Perkins on there, and that sort of stuff, and said, "There's some people out there, you know enough now. Go and speak to them." And like the colour must have visibly drained out of my face at that point. And he said, "Don't worry, just go and ask them how they are, ask them what they're looking for, and the rest of it will flow." So I did. There was a family out on the forecourt, walked out again, asked the question, started the conversation. There's always a bit of luck involved in that, really. They were actually there to come and buy a car rather than
They wanted to buy their own, basically.
Yeah, kick the tires. So I got really lucky, and actually, it was a double win because I got that first sale, which helped me enormously in terms of my confidence, I guess, as a young guy. And, I was probably easily, I would have been 10, 15 years younger than the next salesperson in that showroom.
Right.
But it also bought me a fair bit of breathing space from the owners as well, because this young 18-year-old lad had gone out and closed a deal in his second week. So that whatever came after that over the next 2 years, it bought me a bit of breathing space, I think.
I can imagine. Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because I guess from that first sale to the hundreds of sales you've done ever since. I don't know about you, but the feeling's still the same, right? For me, I get that buzz when you win a new piece of business, whether it's for you, new client, new franchise, new. But it's why I tell people that sales is the best job in the world, because it is an addiction. It's like a drug, isn't it? That feeling of winning.
It is, and I think certainly if you really believe in what you're doing and the positive impact that can have on others, then. Yeah, I'm exactly the same as you. It doesn't matter how big or small it is. I still get that same kind of little tingle that you get inside, and it's also part of you going like, "I still got it."
Exactly. I always tell people that whenever when I would do trade or work with a client or a new business or whatever we do it, I think you walk around a bit like a peacock. My wife will say to me, sort of, "Well, look at you. I've just done a deal." It's just that feeling, isn't it? But you're right. It's driven by the desire to help. I talk to people about a driven desire to help people. Just go down, just off topic. There's a lot of people that our industry gets a really bad rep. A lot of people, salespeople, whatever. What is it in your experience from your long career you've had? What is it the common mistakes that people make when it comes to selling?
Yeah, so I mean, firstly, completely agree with you. That's why our whole mission statement is around changing the way the world perceives sales, because generally it's a bit of a dirty word. It's a dirty word for buyers, but it's also a dirty word for, I think, even people that are in it, sort of half pretend they're not really in it sometimes. I mean, the amount of creative job titles which enable people to remove sales from it, I find it miraculous. Although I love the fact that SDRs is now the buzz job title. It used to be business development managers. At least it's got sales in the SDR bit, which I like. But also it's not a considered or even an aspirational career choice for young people. So, and that's crazy, right? Because every business wants effective salespeople. But if you went and sat in any school across the country now and interviewed a bunch of 15, 16-year-olds and said, like, what do you want to do in your career? I don't think you're going to get any of them tell you that they want to go into sales. Now, I think the US is a little bit further down the line on that than we are. It's more of an aspirational career choice, but it's such a good career choice as well. But I can see why people don't want to do it. I mean, I think all of us as consumers have had bad experiences, and also as B2B buyers as well, we get bad experiences. But I think for me, my belief has always been that that's often less about the individual, more about the culture and the environment that they work in. I think bad businesses make bad salespeople rather than bad salespeople being bad salespeople.
Right.
There are some, of course. There's always going to be some, but most of the poor behaviours that I witness over time, I think a lot of it is bred from the culture and the environment that person's working in, that causes them to behave in the way that they behave, which then creates the bad buyer experience.
I think that's a really interesting point, and I couldn't agree more around sort of, the sort of. Funny if I actually wrote a blog about it at the weekend about how a lot of the time business owners are forces of nature, right? They're forces of nature in what they do, and it's easier to sell as a business owner because you've just got that commitment and that energy and that element behind it. But when you then try and encourage people to sell that don't have that, one of the challenges that people have is they don't have those elements, and so they then get them to do stuff that doesn't make sense, and they have these unrealistic expectations a lot of the time of what can be achieved, especially whether it's B2C or in a B2B environment. Sales cycle length, in most high value B2B, 3 to 6 months, right? Well, in which case, then what expectations have you got after 4 weeks that person's going to be closing the deal? And yet the culture is then to make them make bad decisions. So I think you're right. Culture is a critical part of that process, isn't it? Again, that's part of what we've got to do as educators and leaders in this field. And, members of, proud members and fellows of the Institute of Sales Professionals, we've got to try and make sure we help them solve that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think as you get into more of the mid to large size companies as well, I think sales leaders, sales managers, sales directors are massively undersupported and trained and educated. Therefore, a lot of sales management's done poorly, and I think that also contributes towards poor experiences as buyers, particularly around, I used to about sales cycles. Then I love looking at people's CRMs. It's almost become a hobby of mine. Whenever you look at the forecast dates, it's always end of the month, right? End of the month, end of the quarter, end of the month, end of the quarter. And that's just
like it's basically
yeah. But I think that's just one example where bad traits come out when all of a sudden people got targets to hit. It's the last week of the month, it's the last month of the quarter, whatever people's cadences are, and then all of a sudden the urgency gets dialed up by the seller in that relationship rather than the need from the buyer. I think that's where the bit of desperation kicks in. You're trying to do things, you're trying to manipulate things, and that's where I think the bad stuff starts to really happen. And that's where buyers come away from situations going, I didn't enjoy that, I didn't like that. And it's often created by poor sales management, I think, really, in culture.
You're right. And it's I talk to people a lot about the sales process being a really simple one. Actually, if you think about it, I don't think sales is overly complicated. People have a problem, they feel like they want to be understood, they then want to believe you can solve the problem and then trust you to make it happen, right? And it's not a complicated process. But yeah, a lot of people don't do that. I mean, obviously in your experience, and what are some of if people listen to this now, there's a lot of people listening to this that are in sales roles and that are but also business owners maybe trying to sell. What are some of the top 2 or 3 things that you would encourage anyone to sort of hone in on in terms of their sales skills development, the things that can help them become as successful as you were?
Well, that's a big question there. I think the first thing that always comes to my mind is, like you say, sales should be simple. And I guess because of my career in golf previously, I always kind of draw comparisons. And I think sales, like golf, gets overcomplicated by people that want to sell books. And actually, I think it's quite a simple thing. I think it's quite a natural thing to do. I think we've probably been selling for as long as we've been on the planet as human beings. It's the first thing we do when we arrive on this planet as babies, right? We're selling. So I think it's very simple. So I guess my first thing would be, tip number 1 would be, become a people expert rather than a product expert. I think I see that a lot. I see it in businesses as well as salespeople. And as a younger sales guy, I made this mistake massively. I was obsessed with learning, the detail and the technical and becoming an absolute product geek rather than a person geek. And I think that as I matured from my career, the more I learned about human beings, the better and more effective I became as a salesperson. Um, I think that's definitely the biggest one. And then the second one would be, which I guess it's the old cliche that you would have had this, you should have had this answered every time you've asked this question, which is the whole kind of, you got two ears and one mouth for a reason. Was the 24-year-old version of me a great listener? No, I was so desperate to say what I thought I needed to say in a well-rehearsed sales pitch that I wasn't very good at listening at all. And again, the better I learned to listen, the more empathy I was able to create for people and their problems and their challenges, the better I got at sales.
And it's such a good point you mention it. And I talked to before around, you mentioned listening, and I talk to people a lot about listening is actually listening to what you're not hearing and what
Yeah,
you're actually.
yeah.
See, people think listening is just words, but actually, it's the softer skills. It's the elements around what's their reaction, what's their body language, what's their gestures. I did a video the other week around how to spot. On online calls, people's body, buying signals, and you can
Mhm.
spot it if you hear tonality in voice, if you hear a different type, especially if someone's on a Zoom call and they're turning away or whatever else. But it's those, I think you're so right around those soft skills, those ability to read and understand the way people operate and the way people think. I say to people all the time, your job as a salesperson is to become a fly on the wall in their brain, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You're a fly on the wall in their brain. Your job is to think, what are they thinking right now, and how can they get to that point? But it's funny, isn't it? Because people want the ability to pitch. They want the ability to have the gift of the gab. They want the
yeah.
ability to. That's what's seen as being selling, and yet actually, as it's the opposite.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is the opposite, and I think that again, being more scientific in it and having a deep understanding of people and behaviors and a bit of neuroscience and psychology and stuff in there. It once upon a time, it was about the gift of the gab. Everything about kind of 90s sales
Yeah,
was that it was the sharp suits, it was the stripy ties, and it was it was all about the gift of the gab. But I think it's changed a lot in the last sort of 25, 30 years. But weirdly, I think it's just done a better job of actually suiting the market. I don't think anyone ever really enjoyed that being
no,
sold to in that way. It's just how it was, and it got away with being that way. Maybe just because of how the market was and just everyone was doing it, so it was okay. But I think some of the best salespeople that I've met definitely aren't that. They are often the quieter ones around the sales, the monthly sales meeting. They're obviously often the person in the room that says the least. They listen very well, even internally, and they are great people experts and relationship builders, even in some of those slightly more transactional environments. And I kind of went from working the motor trade where somebody would walk onto a forecourt at 3 o'clock and by 4:30 they've paid a deposit and they're taking a delivery of a car next week. And then when I sold into construction with architectural lighting, that was a 2 to 5 year sales cycle. I went from one extreme
yeah,
to the other, but the same rules actually applies. And the relationship building element, even in that transactional sale, was the same in this very long, drawn out kind of multiple stakeholder environment. Kind of the rules were actually very, very similar. But I think the other thing as well with listening with salespeople is, and this is why I don't ever sort of moan or blame the salespeople for this, is that I think to survive in sales, certainly if you're doing the front end and you're prospecting and you're getting told no a lot, I think you naturally have to err on the side of optimism.
mm,
But then the optimist becomes a dangerous person when you're then maybe qualifying people where you need to be more pragmatic and you have to listen to for the no signals as much as you do the yes signals. I'm a great believer in that you should be looking to qualify people out rather than qualify people in, but that's really hard because it kind of comes up against the optimism of what you need to have to be a good prospector versus then the sort of the pessimist, which for me is the forecaster. And unfortunately, when the optimist does the qualification and the forecasting as well as the prospecting, then things get a little bit dangerous. But I do think it's hard, certainly for younger salespeople, to have that shift in mindset and attitude through the different phases of the process.
yeah. Look, I think you're right. Happy years, as I call it, is a common issue. But it's interesting. Just go back to what we were talking about because I'd actually be interested to get your view of the AI world. Because obviously you've built the business in Sales Geek as you have, and there's a lot of stuff around AI. But one of the things that I talk to people a lot about is that I think, again, be interested to get your thoughts. Feel free to disagree with me, but I think sales is one of the last bastions of roles out there that will go to a robot. So for me, if in a high value, and I say higher value, when it comes to a more transactional sale, if you're selling, mouses or whatever else, then those, we know that Amazon and those guys do those things. But if you're selling a high value sale, most people are still wanting to engage with a human being. Most still people want to still engage with have a conversation, especially if they're investing 5, 10, 15, 20,000 pounds in something, whether it's a product or service or whatever else that you're offering. And I guess that for me, that's why sales should be the career that people want, rather than going down the route of going into McDonald's. Or nothing wrong with McDonald's, or nothing wrong with, I was talking to someone the other day that was going into financial services, and I was like, it's great that you're going into financial services and financial planning, but there will be a tool quite quickly that will replace you, okay, an AI tool, because it can go and correlate all the information around the world from different stock markets and whatever else. The actual ability to have a sales conversation with a buyer and understand the dynamics behind that buyer and what's going on in their world, and then move them through a journey through to becoming a customer. I don't think something a robot can do for a long while. But so therefore, that's why I'm encouraging people to become salespeople.
Yeah.
No, I don't want. Would you agree? Yeah, interested in your views.
Yeah, I'm totally on the same page with that. I think there is some, like you said, some transaction environments where I think buyer preference will be to have a sort of a humanless environment and transactional environment. But yeah, I think I think there are certainly the higher ticket B2B purchases where some of this is just human nature. Like we seek comfort in other humans.
Yeah.
We're tribal animals. We actually, although this whole thing about sales being a dirty word, and salespeople almost being embarrassed about the fact that they are there to sell something, we actually like it and we want it. It's like I always compare it to getting great service in a restaurant. Like a great salespeople should do exactly the same as what a great waiter or waitress does, which is actually ultimately increase the ticket value and the bill value over time, do great upselling and cross-selling, whilst also improving the whole experience for the customer, and they're very grateful for it, and they go away and tell their friends and family. It's no more complicated than that. And in the same way that AI won't serve food onto the table for us, although there'll be robots and stuff like that, and there'll be some gimmicky stuff, and that's cool. I agree with you. I think the whole human to human thing is massively valuable. And I think again, the salespeople that can do that brilliantly will be more valuable. I think they'll be able to use AI tools to become more effective and actually deliver more value to the business they work in, because they'll have more time doing the thing that they're really, really good at, rather than wasting it on doing other stuff that AI will do for them, or work as a very, very good personal assistant. So yeah, I'm with you. I think for those salespeople out there who are in the top 15, 20% of people experts and relationship builders, I think they've got a very exciting future ahead of them. I think if you're in more of a transaction environment, I would upskill yourself pretty quickly and become an expert in humans rather than just a product that you sell, because AI can do that for you.
And that's the bit, though, isn't it? It's the bit that is the bit around the human part that I think, and one of the things, I doing courses is to go through. I mean, I talk a lot about the Thomas Erickson, the four colors disc stuff, and I
Yeah.
engage, or different people you engage with different styles. You'll get, but as I said, put a LinkedIn post the other day, understanding a conscientious blue accountant type person versus understanding a yellow, more outgoing, more gut feel decision based person is a skill, right? And
Yeah.
actually, it's a skill if you can have that ability, whatever you're selling, to spot people and to understand them and to see the dynamic behind it. To me, I just think it's to me, and to you, it's second nature. But I guess it's just surprising. In my experience, I'd be interested to know your percentage on this. I think around only 10-15% of salespeople, people in sales, understand that stuff.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. And again, I think they've just been conditioned wrong
Yeah.
in the early part of their career around what is important. And they think, well, I generally feel like they think most of the stuff that they think is important isn't important. And certainly when it comes to like this whole thing around product knowledge and becoming a product expert, it's like buyers are so well educated these days. I've just, my car's coming to the end of its 3-year cycle, right? So I've just gone and ordered a new one. And I did everything I needed to do to get to a point where I knew exactly which one I was getting, which spec I was getting, what the best deals were on that car, without having to engage with a human being. And there was no way, by the time, if I'd have walked into that manufacturer's showroom I'm pretty sure as a buyer, I could have gone toe to toe on product knowledge for any sales
Well,
guy.
you being a petrol head as well, you definitely would have done, I would have thought.
Yeah, yeah. And the worst thing, if I'd have then walked into the showroom, the worst thing a salesperson could have done at that point would have been to try and kind of like go like tete-a-tete around their knowledge of the vehicle and the specification and the data and the range and all that sort of stuff. Because I know it. What they need to do in that situation is absolutely go down the path of, okay, so what is it you need it for? What led you to look at this particular model? And all of a sudden I'm talking then, right? Okay, I've got rugby kit in there on a Saturday. I got my little one in there on a Sunday. I got 2 dogs. I need to do this. I need 300 miles. Right. And now I'm starting to talk about me rather than him talking about or her talking about the product. And I think that's where really poor sales environments get that wrong. You see it in retail, like, you walk into a electronics retailer.
I was just about to say I bought a new telly a couple of weeks ago from well, I didn't buy it from Curry's because they were the whole approach was awful. But I said to the guy, I said, literally, my wife, I mean, our telly had been quite old. Which telly should I get out of these two tellies? And I think I said to him, what's the difference between these two brands, these two tellies? And all I proceeded to get was a list of verbose diarrhea around QLED and product features and functions and the way the glass was and whatever
Yeah,
else. So not one question around how often do you put the telly on,
yeah,
or what would make it, what would make it work for you to have what are you looking for with that telly? Is it to impress people? Is it just to watch good telly? And what would actually make you feel frustrated if you bought a telly? And what are you looking for? And all those questions that we would know to ask and to answer, it was just straight into a diarrhea, and it was like, at the end I left more confused because I'm not a telly person. I was like, I'm left more confused. So
yeah.
I
No,
think
I totally agree. But that's exactly everything about like old school sales. Is like I'm going to, through trying to impress you, I'm going to confuse you into submission
yeah.
to come and buy something from me.
And also, but just into that part of the process, I'll say this, I didn't buy from Curry's is because I couldn't even, the TV that they had there in the room, I couldn't take it with me. But people talk about the buyer process.
Yeah,
And I would say Jeff Bezos is a billionaire because he starts with the customer and works backwards, right?
yeah,
The journey for the customer needs to be simple. And part of our job in salespeople is people think it's done when actually when the transaction's done. No, it's done when the customer's happy, when you've then got that person or that lady or that man or whatever saying, do you know what? What a brilliant experience, because they then become the tribe for you that are then
yeah.
selling on your behalf, right? Which is
They do.
the fuzz. And I think a lot of salespeople also think, "Oh, my job's done. The transaction's
Yeah.
done." No, you've got an audience there of people that will become your advocates if you want them to, and your disciples. But again, people don't seem to do that.
No, but although I think there are some of those brands in that more what I call sort of transactional sales environments have actually cottoned on to that now. So I it was a while ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, we moved house. I went into a DFS and I was chatting to the guy there because I can't help it. I love speaking to other salespeople. I drive my wife mad. I either want to know about what they do, their environment, kind of how they're incentivized and stuff like that, or if one of them calls me, I can't help
You're
but
a
end up
geek for sales, right? So
in a coaching conversation. Yeah, it's really bad. But I was speaking to this guy, and he was saying, "No, we get paid on our reviews now, post sales. We don't get commission on
interesting.
units. Yeah, we don't get." And I think there's some of the vehicle manufacturers and dealership that go in the same way now. So rather than paying the sales teams on transaction, they pay them on the feedback and the customer satisfaction afterwards.
Well, I'm glad to see it's going that way because I think it needs to. But and like you say, you get people to then realize that the job is to make the customer ultimately happy. So,
Yeah.
but just talking about, obviously you've had a lot of success in your sales career. Can you remember? I also like sharing mistakes and things that we've done. Can you remember a sales mistake that you've made in your career that you look back and think, oh my goodness me, was there anything in particular that comes to mind that you thought that was a good lesson and learning for you?
Yeah, loads. I mean, we'd have to have a whole another hour on my mistakes through my career. I guess they'd probably take some different shapes and forms. I guess the some of the hardest lessons I probably got at the beginning because you're so immature and you're more likely to make mistakes at the beginning. One quick one, I reversed a car through a showroom wall the day the showroom was due to open, and I was
Oh,
4 months into my career. That took a little bit of making up for. But no, I remember once taking it. I was in the showroom this is back in the early days. I'll come to a latter one in a minute, but I remember being in the showroom on Saturday morning and his car pulled up outside and as this family were getting out, I was like, as soon as they got out of the car, I was like, oh, I know those guys. And then I remembered they'd been in the previous week. They'd they'd ordered a car. It was a second-hand car. They reserved it with a deposit, and they were here to collect it. And I immediately realised that since last Saturday, I had not passed that over into
Oh,
the other
really?
areas of the business. So then go and do the prep, do the service it,
Yeah.
MOT
So the
it,
car
come
ready
clean
to
for me.
pick it up, basically.
So yeah, so they turned up. Car wasn't ready. I felt like that big. I was a young guy at the time, and ultimately they went and got another vehicle from our sister dealership up the road, and I had to make my peace with my boss pretty quickly. And that's a good example of, like, I got to your point a minute ago around service and being delighted afterwards. If you look at it in the most simple sense, I'd got the transaction right. They'd paid the deposit, they'd signed the order form, like the commission was going to come to me next month. But the reality is, I actually then let them down on the whole experience thing. And ultimately, no, it cost me that deal, but the chances are they've probably gone and told their mates about how that young guy at that place messed up and they should go to this one instead. So yeah, that was quite a difficult lesson about, I was probably 4 or 5 months into my sort of full-time sales career. I was, less than 19 years old, and that was that was quite scary. I think at the time, but that's probably the one that emotionally I can remember the most, because I remember that sinking feeling when somebody rocked up. But I think outside of that, like kind of later on in my B2B sales career, I've probably made more mistakes as a sales leader than a salesperson. I think I don't think I've always got the balance right of going back to the sales culture thing of like driving results versus kind of, sort of being the
Yeah.
empathetic leader in the team as well. And I
Yeah.
think I ended up in a sales leadership role quite young, and I think bit of imposter syndrome, trying to sort of prove to myself that that I could do it, and I probably tried a bit too hard, I reckon, through probably a certain state, like late 20s, probably when most of the guys in the sales team were older than me, and I kind of felt like I had to prove myself to those guys, and probably didn't always get that balance right of performance versus being a good leader to them as well.
It's tough though, isn't it? Because I mean, again, we've both been in sales leadership positions where, and funny enough, I was talking, we just appointed a new head of sales into our business in South Africa, and I talked to people about, the phrase I use, it's a weird phrase, but I talked about it to the recruiter when we were down there. I said, I'm looking for a charismatic bastard. And and it was basically because I'm looking for someone who's got the charisma to bring people with them on the journey and to make them want to inspire and to create people to want to work and to run through a brick wall for that person, and to have that sort of willingness and desire to educate and to teach and all those sort of aspects, and to bring people along with the journey. But you've also got to have someone that can sniff out the BS and go and make sure they call out the stuff that needs to be done, and focus people on doing stuff. Because you and I know, rightly or wrongly, we're all, as not just salespeople, as human beings, we're
Yeah,
inherently lazy. We are
yeah,
inherently, we stay focused to the basics of not doing the hard things unless we put ourselves into those challenging spots. So it's hard, isn't it, to be that leader? And any tips that for anyone listening to this, it's in that sales leadership position that you think that would help you, move forward or build and develop?
yeah. I think, again, weirdly, a lot of the I suppose advice and tips I give is probably the same as I give to salespeople, because I think if you think about what our role is as salespeople when it comes to customers, it's broadly the same as them being a sales leader with a sales team, in terms of, learn them, like learn about them, understand them and their problems and their challenges. And I think the biggest, hands down, if I look at it at a more macro level, the biggest mistake I made, certainly in my sales leadership career, but probably partly in my sales career as a younger salesperson, was, you mentioned, like Disc earlier, and it was a great book, Surrounded by Idiots. And it took me too long to realize that not everyone thought the same as me, was motivated the same as me, saw the world in the same way that I saw the world. And as a younger guy, you just think everyone has the same pair of eyes and the same set of ears, and they see and hear the world in the same way. And I think it took me too long into my career, I think. Not really. I mean, I was, so probably my late 20s, 30s when I sort of discovered that. But yeah, I think really understanding the people, and that you're leading and you're managing the same way you want to understand customers, and be a customer expert, be a people expert as a leader. Understand that in your sales team, it might be slightly less diverse than your customer mix, because you get similar types of profiles from a disc perspective often in sales teams, but there is a difference. Not everyone's motivated by the same things. Not everyone's motivated by success and money. Some people get their kicks from other things. And I think, yeah, learning what the other people want rather than assuming what they want as a leader was a big thing for me.
I think it's such a good point you make, and it's, in roles where I've done, and I was helping an organisation out a couple of months back, and sadly the sales director that was in that organisation was left because it was part of a buyout, and he was about to actually get rid of one of the salespeople that were there, and well, he wanted to get rid of that salesperson, and it was a classic case. It reminded me of, the job of you talk about, football, rugby, or and golf, but, any sports team, your job as a manager is to understand the characters and the people you've got in your environment.
Yeah.
And there was a great thing. I like football as well, and there was a great, in fact, take cricket. We're talking about the Ashes is going out around the Ashes. There's bowlers that are being told, actually, their job is to go in and do something for a short space of time and have an impact. Okay, and there's other bowlers that are probably going to be there for longer, to be to bowl the longer spells. Or, I remember there was a great saying that Neil Warnock, the QPR manager at the time, he used to say about this player Anil Tarabat. He said, he was so good going forward that it was brilliant, but he used to say, if ever he got into his own penalty area, he was a liability.
Yeah.
So in the end, he decided to fine him if he ever went into his own penalty area, because he'd give away penalties and free kicks. But he was so breathtaking going forward. It's knowing that, isn't it? It's having that. I call it. There's a video I did a number of years ago on emotional sales intelligence. So emotional intelligence and the sales part added into it, and having that ability to be self-aware and have that empathy and understand and build relationships with people. I just think you're right. And sales leaders that worry why stuff's not happening, it's probably because they're focused on themselves a bit more,
Yeah.
rather than understanding the people that they're working with and what their challenges are.
Yeah, totally. I know David Brailsford's most famous for his marginal gains thing, but there's a great video doing the rounds from him it'd be on YouTube somewhere, where he talks about like the fact that there's no I in team, but actually every team is made up of a group of individuals, and part of your job as the leader is like uh to understand those drivers for each person. And again, I was a very driven young guy. I grew up in a working class background, and sales gave me an insight into a level of income, and that I wasn't accustomed to growing up. So I was a very hungry, very hardworking, very ambitious young sales guy. And then when I stepped into a sales leadership role, because that happened fairly organically, because I was one of the better sales guys in the team, so you kind of get the promotion, right? I just assumed that every salesperson was motivated in the same way that I was by the same things. And I had to realize pretty quickly, but having made some mistakes along the way, that that's not everyone's driver. And some people want security. Some people genuinely just love looking after their customers. Everyone's got a different thing, and it depends on their personality and what they want out of life. And learning more about people, whether you're a salesperson or a sales leader, be more curious and more leaning in to people and what they want and what they need in life is critical, I think, in any role actually in business.
I think you're right. Well, I always say to people that there's a reason why, so Sundar Pichai, Google CEO, was appointed not because he was the brightest person, but because he had the best EQ.
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about emotional quota being such a, it's the most important one. But to businesses and to having that ability to spot people as you see and to understand them. Just on, we talked about your, conscious of time, and you're a busy man. We could talk for ages around sales-based things, and we probably should do it another time. But talk about some of your worst sales mistakes. Can you remember is there a sale that comes to mind that was your best ever sale, or the most memorable sale, or was it one that you just think, no, actually, that just, you just look back and we always have fond memories thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess this might sound a bit self-indulgent, but my fondest memory is my first ever Sales Geek client. I mean, that was, when and you'll know this, James, like you've been through this, that kind of the chasm of, I don't have an income anymore, I hope somebody hires me. And I still have that invoice printed out in a frame on the wall of my spare bedroom at home. We have a meeting room named after the guy here. We've got in our office here, there's 3 meeting rooms. They're all named after people that have had, that were important to me in the early days. And one of them's named after that customer. So yeah, I think, when you've taken the leap of faith, you need some other people to take a leap of faith in you pretty early on, at a time where maybe other people won't. So yeah, I think for me, emotionally, that's definitely the biggest one, is that first ever client. probably the same again with our first ever, first franchisee in the UK, first one in the US, first ones in India. I have a real soft spot for those guys that were brave enough to be the first. So yeah, all of those. But I think ultimately my first ever Sales Geek client invoice number 00001. It wasn't a huge amount of cash.
Doesn't
It's
matter, is it? It's just the first one. It was just the fact someone put their
just
trust in you.
social proof that maybe someone else, there might be some people out there that want some of what we were offering.
No, look, we're going to talk about Sales Geek in a moment because obviously what you guys do is great. But you know, just in terms of one of the things that I'm a big believer in talking about a lot is the constant element to stay sharp. As in, and I say to people, I make mistakes all the time, and even though I teach and help people to sell and build I've got a team of people that we still need to stay alert and to learn is there anything at the moment, obviously from your perspective, because obviously we came in contact because you were kind enough to listen to my podcast. It's one of the things that we do. Is there anyone at the moment that you're really listening to, podcasts or books or whatever, that you'd recommend people to and I can do the same and listen to you? The only reason being is because I think one of the things is we've all got to have that thirst and hunger to keeping the act sharp and to learn, and the world changes so quickly. Even people, the world changes people, which is what key thing for us. So is there anything at the moment that's in your top of your sort of reading list or listening list?
Yeah, so I really like to have a mix of stuff. I probably, here's an admission, I probably don't listen to lots of sales stuff. Actually, I really like a much broader kind of spectrum of content. Certainly when it comes to, again, understanding people and humans. And I think I end up, I probably, if I was to summarize my kind of current intake of content, it's probably, I think probably less than 20% of it is out and out like sales stuff. I think probably 80% of it is going to be just a real mixture and a cross section of different types. I get a lot of inspiration from sport, like we said earlier. So yeah, I like listening to like high performance podcasts. I like listening to there's a couple of running, since I retired from rugby, I've got into running. So I listen to like running, and I get inspired by even listening to athletes' stories around what they've done, how they've achieved what they've achieved. I find the crossover back into business and sales is quite parallel as well. So listen to a lot of content around that, modern wisdom, diary of a CEO, those types of things. Some of those I kind of have little spells where I listen to a few and I don't listen to it for a few months, and I get back into some audio books and kind of listen to those things. I like watching stuff on YouTube as well, which I just find I go down a weird rabbit holes of different types of content sometimes, and I kind of start in one place trying to dig out Simon Sinek's most recent kind of theme or book. I'm a bit of a man fan, I have to say, of Simon Sinek. He's got a new book coming out around friendship, which I can't wait to hear. And that's all about the value of human contact in a technological world. Big believer in that. And like you start watching one of his videos, and then like an hour and a half later, you're watching cat videos, right? So you end up going down the chain. But I think book wise, again, similarly with books, I guess, James, I kind of I like stuff around human behavior in the brain. There's a great book I bought on my previous trip to India on the way back called "Don't Believe Everything You Think," which is a great book from a self-development perspective. Just talks to you about the power, but also the danger of the inner voice. It's often not the thing that happens to us that hurts us. It's our response and our reaction to it. And I guess I'm interested in that stuff, not just from a personal development perspective, but it's relevant to everyone else that you're speaking to as well. So, understanding the human behavior stuff, I think that means that the variety of content, books, podcasts, etc., has to be as varied as well. But yeah, sales content wise, it's probably only about 20% of what I consume.
No, I'm with you because I think, look, it's hard, isn't it? Because we're sales. But we sort of know enough of the fundamentals of sales. And if someone's someone's giving you a new tip or trick or an idea, and you pick those things up, and those are useful. But for me, people like Vanessa Von Edwards, I just absolutely love the school of people. That whole idea of, right, how can you spot and look at signals, or how can you certain reactions, or some of the most empowering books for me are also about things that that I think have stayed the test of time. And I was telling someone the other day about Jim Camp's book around no negotiation,
Yeah.
and just sort of, but things that have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Some of Zig Ziglar stuff, right? Which is people. I was talking to a train session the other day, and like Zig who, and I was like, okay, like, this is like the godfather of.
Yeah. I'd be like, get out.
I was, I was like, really? You've never heard of? And it was like, and I put a bit, and of course, he's got that very dark, a very deep, tone and sort of, and and then someone was, oh, it sounds like an American salesman. I said, no, if you want to listen to like, shoot from the hip, go and listen to Cardone or Andy Elliott, right? But if you want to listen to Zig Ziglar, who really is about that idea of understanding the customer and what drives the customer, that I was like, yeah. And then one of the guys we did it over an 8-week period. He came back and said, I've listened to some of the stuff. He's quite good, isn't he? I was like, yeah, he's.
Yeah.
He was known in our industry and what he was doing. But yeah, look, there's some good stuff out there in terms of doing things. So look, let's move on. Karen.
I was going to chuck one person's name out there actually,
Yeah.
which who I have again a lot of love for, and I think just really relevant to sales, although it might not seem it on the front end, but that's Brené Brown.
Yes.
Talks a lot about vulnerability and kind of again human psychology and understanding people, and I think actually in a lot of sales environments, part of our job is to create the psychological safety for someone to be vulnerable with us and tell us their problems and challenges.
Yes.
And I think she, although she's not in the sales space, I think she's got some really, really good content. So yeah, Brené Brown, big fan.
I couldn't agree more. I would say to people, your prospects are like an onion. They got layers to them, right? And you got to peel beneath the layers. And if you don't peel beneath the layers, you get superficial stuff, which generally ends in objections and response and not getting deals done. So, so let's talk about Sales Geek thing. So obviously, 9 years ago, you decided to say, stuff this. I'm going to go work myself.
Yeah.
What was the big vision then? What was and talk to people that don't know. Obviously, you've grown, and I've watched you guys grow, and it's great to see that. I think you've got like I don't know. It looked like there was 70 or 80 franchisees, and now big numbers. And so talk to me what the original vision was to do it, and where you are now, and what would you guys sort of, where's the plan for the next couple of years then?
So yeah, I mean, I guess the original idea for Sales Geek, and you asked me earlier about my one of my favorite sales, I guess. Actually, probably the biggest pitch I ever had to make in my life was sorry, the light's just gone off in here.
Yeah, drama.
One of the biggest pitches I had to make in my life was to my wife. Back in the 2016, when we were a single income family with a child, having just moved into a house into the north of England, to say, yeah, this job and the stock options and all the stuff that's come with it, I want to leave it behind. So that was probably the biggest
sales. That was the biggest sales pitch ever. Yeah.
But actually, again, funny, right? Because in my head, I built this thing up in my head. This is going to, she's going to really need some convincing here. Like, this doesn't make sense. She's going to think I'm stupid. And actually, she completely blew me away with her response, which empowered me to come and do it. But yeah, I guess, as a business, probably once through that first year, that's probably where we started to really forge out kind of the mission and what we want to go and do. But the brutal truth is, James, that the initial plan for the business was just to not be miserable as a human being. I don't mind. I was 32. I was a global sales director for a North American PLC. I should have been in my dream job, and I hated it. And I was really confused, and it was a very, very confusing time. I think it'd be fair to say that 18-year-old version of me that gave up on the golf career and went into sales, if you'd have said, right, okay, in 12, 13 years from now, you're going to be in this role, with what comes with it and all that sort of stuff, I'd have ripped your arm off to be there. And yet I got there, and then very quickly realized that kind of wasn't my native home. I didn't belong in that environment. And that's not, not purely kind of like just dropping on the company and environment. It just wasn't me. I think we all have natural environments that we thrive in and ones that we don't thrive in, and that environment definitely wasn't for me. So originally it was just me trying to be a part-time sales director for a bunch of small businesses in a part of East Lancashire that I lived in for a couple of years. And so it was just getting out, networking, meeting people, talking to them about the fact that, this is what I used to do, but now I'm a part-time sales director for small businesses. And actually, that's where I think, in terms of kind of Sales Geek and what we do, a lot of misconceptions are, a lot of people think we're a sales training organization. We do deliver sales training, but actually 80% of our revenue is fractional part-time sales director services to small businesses. We very much sit in the S of SME. It would be fair to say. And I love it. Like I every now and again now I get to dip back into delivery, and I miss it massively as a business has grown. That's one of the byproducts. I don't get to do as much stuff directly with customers anymore. But I love the people that we help. I love going from kind of working in a PLC where you're helping fund second yachts and fourth homes, and for people that they don't care about you and you don't really care about them. Let's be fair. It's just a share price that needs to be influenced on a quarter by quarter basis. To sitting in front of people whose whole lives are on the line, running their businesses, and often they're not massively material about it either. They want to do good with their product or service. They've got mouths to feed at home. They've got holidays to fund, and the thing that keeps them up the most at night is sales. So I love what we do, and I guess pretty quickly wanted to be able to do that at a greater level of scale, because I knew that there's only so many businesses I could help on my own. And so for those first sort of few years, we sort of grew the business organically, locally, and we kind of employed a team. And I suppose at the point that we hit 2020, we had a team of 10 of us. 7 of us were selling and delivering services, but 80% of our revenue was coming from where we are here in the north of England, in Lancashire. So we then franchised the business through COVID, actually. And that was driven by, you mentioned Neil Warnock earlier as a football manager. I think that if there's a career with a more volatile shelf life than being a sales leader, it's probably a football manager. And in the first few years of doing this, I had a lot of them reach out to me and tell me how unhappy and miserable they were doing what they were doing. And I felt through the franchise model, we could not only just help more customers, but I could help some more sales leaders to, I suppose, transition from something that made them unhappy to a different future for them. And yeah, we launched that in 2021, and yeah, like you said, now we've got 70 or nearly 80 geeks across 5 or 6 different countries, which is cool. And the numbers are cool, and I suppose it's a metric to show off with to the outside world. But the real thing for me is behind every single one of those people is a backstory. I've heard all of them sit in the room with me at some point and tell me why they needed to move on from what they were doing, and it's a real privilege to help them with that.
I love that, and I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think we, as both as people in sales environments and different sort of parts of sales, but it's as I always say to people now, that the key thing for me is I'm getting to the stage in my life where Matt Garman, my business partner, talks a lot about for the first 25 years of his life, he was learning, then he was taking, now he's giving back, and I think it's that aspect of making it. And for me, when I talk to people about podcasts, or when people reach out and they say to you, thank you so much for that video that you shared, or that insight you've given has helped me do this, or and that's the bit that makes you feel it sounds, everyone's gonna think we're having a bit of a love in here, but it makes you feel good. It makes you feel that's the bit that makes me feel I like go, I've done my job today. I've impacted one person in the world that's made as a result of listening to something or helping something or helping them change something, and that's the powerful thing, isn't it? And that's the reason why I love sales, is because I would say to people, everything in business, everything in life feels better when the tills ring, right? And when the tills ring, you just feel better. You can cope. I've never met a business owner that is in a position where they go, well, I'm really stressed. Okay, are you stressed because of money? No, I've got loads of business coming in. I'm stressed how to deliver it. We'll fix that.
Yeah, yes, very true.
The one that you struggle with is, okay, I've got wages coming through and our numbers are low and I don't know how to fix it. And that's the bit for me that's the fun bit, is when you help them fix it, and then you put those elements in place and you build those engines and they do it. It's great, isn't it? So, yeah. So but talk about what the next few years are. How many more people are you going to help then? How many more sales directors are you going to take out of misery and put into franchise roles? What's the plan for the next few years then?
Yeah, so I guess the big, hairy, audacious goal is it was once called. Like I said, we're at sort of 75, 80 at the minute. The magic number for me is 1,000 geeks globally by 2030 is kind of the number that I guess we're chasing down. We're slowly colouring in a map with yellow paint on the wall as we chalk off those new regions. But I think that's been, again, you talk about like fulfillment. I mean, seeing a guy in Mumbai delivering content to a room full of people that was written in Blackburn, and really making a difference in a community 4,000 miles away from something that kind of came from here, it still blows my mind now. And seeing people rocking up to our events, one of our sort of free gifts that we give to the world is Sales Club. All of our franchisees have that to go and deliver in their communities. And we had a guy in Northern India 2 weeks ago, he had 100 people in a room for his first ever Sales Club. And then
Wow.
the week after, we've got the dudes up in Scotland with 300 people at Hampden Park, and in Glasgow. It genuinely blows my mind that I remember our first ever sales club back in 2018. I think we had 30 people in the Chamber of Commerce offices. So seeing those guys, and also, not only seeing the impact they're having on other people, but like these are people that ultimately have taken the leap of faith at some point, and they've stepped away from a job. They've taken the big brave step to come and do it. They've had to convince their partner at some point that it's a good idea, and then seeing the energy they get from that, whilst building their client book is mega, because it's scary. You've done it. There's several people before us that have done it, and it takes real courage to step into a path which isn't the path that often we get rammed into our brains as young people. It's like they go to school, get a job, get a mortgage. Hopefully you retire before you die, and that's what life looks like. And actually, in the world of, being an entrepreneur, stepping out, doing something different, it opens up a whole new world of opportunities and experiences to you that you can't even imagine are there. You'd had the same thing, right? You've successfully run your business over the last 8 years, and it would have opened up things that from on day one when you were sat at home probably weren't even part of the plan. But it opens up a whole new spectrum to you, and that's life's an adventure. But I think sometimes we get so caught up in pursuing the things we're told to pursue that we lose that sense of adventure, I think. And stepping away from that and living the adventurous life is good fun.
Well, look, I think it's interesting. I was in Bristol the other day, and I was looking at the Clifton Suspension Bridge, and I said to someone that I was with, I was thinking, excuse my French, I was like, fuck me. I said, is Bruno now looking down going, God, he's still using it? And actually, I think it's, the bit for me, and I would say is that, when I'm gone, whenever that'll be, I want legacy to live on. I want, a bit like Zig Ziglar. I was looking down thinking, it's just you guys talking about him. So I think, and look, credit to you for what you've built, because, I'm not, you've built an incredible, and you're helping, like you say, brand and organization that's helping, like you say, not just helping, those people that work with you, but also the ripple effect of the, those 75 or 80 people working with 10 people, whatever each. Suddenly there's 8, and then the families of those people that are then seeing sales come in. So suddenly that ripple effect of what you're doing is going out to hundreds and hundreds of people. So that, it's incredible that you're doing. And like I said, as I said at the start, I think there's a huge opportunity for everyone, and especially people with a similar mind to as ourselves. We've got a big job to do to educate people of what sales is and what it's about, and it's done in a different way. So, look, I'm conscious of time. We've been chatting for a little while, but look, where can people reach you if they want to reach out to you? I guess LinkedIn or at Sales Geek?
Yeah, so I mean, if you want to hook up with me, I hang out on LinkedIn most of the time. Don't go on the rest of the social media platforms. It's just pictures of my dog and mountains. Professionally, LinkedIn is kind of where I hang out, or you can check out Sales Geek at salesgeek.world. But yeah, if you want to meet a person, come and find me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Look, well, thank you so much for giving up your time today. It's been great. And look, I could have chatted to you for long. It's always great when you meet kindred spirits of thought process in the same way as and to go through this sort of stuff, because I think, like you say, there's so much development to do, and so much to help other people understand what the industry that we both love and that we know and care about so much is. But it gets misaligned and misthought of a lot of the time. But a lot of the time, that's when it's done in the right way, it's a brilliant experience. And I always say, if you can, there's 3 ways to sell: F 'em and duck 'em, which is duck the shit that comes your way. Which a lot of people still. So I always think that 3 ways to sell: fuck 'em and duck 'em, as I would call it, which is where a lot of salespeople used to be, and duck the shit that comes your way. Deliver and disappoint, which is you meant well but doesn't work, or transform and tribe, and you build and you transform someone's world from where it is to where they want to be, and that feeling is incredible for people. So look. Really appreciate your time, Richard. It's great to chat to you, and as I say, I'll recommend and put some links into your LinkedIn bio if anyone wants to reach out to and have conversations and chat to you about some of the stuff that you guys do. So look, it's great to have you on the podcast, and I'm sure in a couple of years' time I'm going to bring you back for another one where we're then talking about your 500 franchisees. And we'll go.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's been great fun.
Great to have you here, and as I say, look forward to it. So okay, well, that was the Richard view. As I say, brilliant source of inspiration and ideas from Sales Geek. Go and have a look at Richard, and I'll put a link into Richard's profile. But as ever, the whole podcast is about sharing experiences and insights from people that can help make the world a better place and help people achieve sales success. So that's it for this week. Hope you've enjoyed. If you have, please like and subscribe to the channel as ever. Share it with other people. Let's get more people getting the sales success and results they want. But if not, see you next week. Take care.